Hello and welcome to Resume Writing, a workshop presented by the Office of Career Services. My name is Siona Escoto, and I'm the Outreach and Placement Specialist in the Office of Career Services here at BRCTC. I have the great honor of working with students while they are enrolled in classes, as well as graduates once they have completed their programs. I can work with you on anything from resume writing support, cover letter writing support, mock interview practice, career education workshops such as resume writing or emotional intelligence, or even topics such as career competency, problem solving, and critical thinking. I can also work with you to evaluate your degree program and see if it's a best fit. I also have the great opportunity to maintain the online job board. That's right, you heard me. Whether you knew it or not, we have an online job board on our website. Regional employees from Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and even as far as PA send me job opportunities that they would like Blue Ridge students and graduates to apply for. The greatest thing about maintaining the online job board is I get to have relationships with employers, so that way when you graduate, I can connect you directly for job placement. That's a service that I call Career Connections. And whether you work with me directly or not, you will see my name again, because as the Outreach and Placement Specialist, I connect with all students after every level of credential. So what that means is that while you are working on a degree, if you receive a certificate along the way, you will receive an email or a text or even a phone call if you don't respond fast enough from me asking about your status. You understand that some students don't return after a certificate. Some go right out into the workforce and begin working. As a result, we survey students after every level of credential just in case you decide not to come back. And we survey you to see if you need help finding a job. We're really passionate about you finishing your degree program and then getting a job within your degree field. And as a result, I'm here to help you in the Office of Career Services. So for any of the services that I listed, I am here and available for you whenever you need me. For today's purpose, we're going to be talking about resume writing. Before we get into resume writing, let's talk about what we're going to discuss in our workshop today. We're going to understand or learn about something called the professional brand and what your professional brand entails. I'd like to explain the role of a resume to you because it has changed slightly from the role that it used to serve in the past. We're going to talk about different resume formats and the components within each section of a resume. And all throughout our workshop, we will also be discussing the psychology or the strategy behind having an effective resume. So let's jump right into it. So before we talk about a resume, we have to talk about something called a brand. A brand is a broad word that can be applied to companies on a commercial sense, as well as people on a personal sense, and our professional side as well. As a company, we can see that different organizations have logos or themed slogans. And these are different ways that organizations demonstrate their brand to consumers. And we can learn a lot about a company through their brand or through their logo or their slogan. A brand can tell us who you are, what you do, and maybe why we should care to remember you. And by learning about a brand on a commercial sense, we can apply that to ourselves as individuals as well as professionals. A personal brand is everything about you that influences your identity. Maybe you're a musician. Maybe you enjoy riding horses. Maybe you go to church every Sunday. These are things about you that are personal. These are things that are personal about you and things that you may share with coworkers in a team once you're working at a company, but not the things that you would step forward to get hired by an employer for. Rather, that would be your professional brand. A professional brand is the side of you that will be evaluated by an employer when they are evaluating your knowledge, skills, abilities, qualifications, as well as career competencies. Those are all of the things that will be evaluated by an employer for them to distinguish your professional brand. So a professional brand is everything influencing the identity of you within your career and your workplace. To build on that, your professional brand is everything that makes you exactly the professional that you are. In fact, every professional has a brand, whether they know it or not. And the good news is that you yourself get to define your brand. But we first have to teach you about it so that way you know how to define it. So a brand is literally everything that you think, do, say, watch, wear, eat, and drive. It's your personality. It's the knowledge, skills, and abilities that you bring to an employer. It's also your professional preferences. It's everything that you would like to demonstrate to a prospective employer so they see the value with bringing you on as an employee. Your professional brand is demonstrated in different areas. It's first demonstrated to an employer through your resume. The resume is the very first document that an employer will ever receive that's about you, unless you met them through networking. So your resume is the very first representation of you and your professional brand to an employer. Your professional brand can also be seen through your cover letter, the way that you speak, the way that you deliver your 60-second elevator speech. Through your email. Maybe it's through your email etiquette or lack thereof, or maybe even through your email address. Your social media says a lot about your professional brand. Now, if you have social media accounts that are professional in nature, such as a LinkedIn, then you would want employers to view that to have another idea of how professional you are within your professional brand. Your networking message, even your business card can demonstrate your professional brand. Most cases, your business card is created by your employer or your organization. And as a professional, once you are employed by a company, you represent and exemplify their commercial brand, all while at the same time still demonstrating who you are as a professional within your professional brand. So never forget that you are your brand and your brand is you. Your brand is something very important to think about when you're creating job search documents such as your resume and cover letter, knowing that these will be the very first two documents or examples to a prospective employer about you and your professional brand. So I mentioned earlier that the resume and the purpose of the resume has changed in nature from how it used to be before. It used to be that we created a resume and we put all of the information about us and our professional brand on the resume. We tell them every aspect of education, we let them know about every previous employer, and we just make it vague and general. This used to work to our advantage when we applied to jobs before technology was introduced to the job search process. Once technology was introduced and the nature of applying for jobs went from mailing things in to applying online, the purpose of the resume changed slightly. The purpose of the resume now is to be strategic and to let an employer, a prospective employer, know what qualifications and educational qualifications you bring to the table that directly relate to the job you're applying for. And so whereas resumes used to be very comprehensive and general, now they are very clear, concise, and strategic. And so knowing that, we have to talk about the psychology and the strategy behind the different components of our resume so the resume can do its job. And the resume has one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to get us to the interview. So what is a resume? Sometimes I have to stop myself and I have to take a step back and say, oh my goodness, not everybody might be familiar with what a resume is. If you've never applied to a career job before, you may have only received interviews by filling out applications. Once you graduate from college and you have an educational credential to brag about, a resume is something that is a requirement for you to submit to jobs when applying. The resume is an elevated level of documentation to talk about your qualifications. It elevates your professional brand from entry level to now qualified directly with a technical skill that you obtained from college. Once again, more strategy. So a resume is a summary of your professional history and qualifications. A resume may cover your career goals, or it might summarize your past experience. It's going to tell an employer about your educational qualifications, as well as maybe previous work experience, and maybe some activities or honors or special skills that you've acquired along the way. And we will talk about what those entail as we continue. So resumes vary in format, but for the most part, the bare bones content always entail a header, a career objective or professional profile, also sometimes known as a qualification summary, an education section where you talk about and brag about your credentials, your experience section. Experience might encompass your previous work experience as well as volunteer experience. And then some other sections. And the other sections would be things such as activities, honors, and special skills that you might have. So let's break it down a little bit more and talk about what each one of these different content areas entail. This is important for me to mention at this time that this presentation accompanies the Office of Career Services Resume Primer Guide. This presentation follows this primer guide exactly. You may listen to this presentation and take notes on the primer guide as we go along. And you will notice that majority of what I'm mentioning in the presentation is also encompassed right here in this packet for your review and your construction of the resume at home. Please feel free to move along as we go forward. So talking about the header might sound pretty self-explanatory. Your name, your contact information, and that's about it. But there's some important things for us to mention in this section. I know it might seem very common knowledge to have your name on a resume, but it is not unusual for me to receive resumes in the Office of Career Services with no names. And so I mention it, and I mention it with sincerity, that your name is the most important thing on the resume. Nothing else matters on the resume if your name is not front and centered, bright and bold right there. Now, having said that, you do not need to make it centered, justified centered, and you do not need to make it bold, but your name does need to be present on your resume. It used to be that we put our home address on our resume as well. And when we applied for jobs previously, before technology, we would take our cover letter and our resume and we would mail it into a particular employer to apply for a job. When we did that, our address on our resume was very important because it served as a return address in case the envelope was trashed, and it also connected our cover letter with our resume. However, nowadays, we create resumes and we very often will upload them to Indeed or to LinkedIn, and allowing recruiters to view our resume from the back end. As a result, we wouldn't want people to know where we lay our head at night, and therefore we no longer put our home address on the resume. Now, when you apply for a position online, you will fill out a secure form as your application and submit your home address as well as your social and very important information. But that is through a secure form instead of putting important vital information on your resume, which will live on the internet. So consider that as you are creating your header section. Also, it's important for you to have a valid email. This one says AOL.com, and I have this here as a conversation point. Email is very important. Email can tell an employer a lot about you. Having an email at AOL.com, if you are in healthcare or a field that does not use technology often, would not matter so much to a recruiter. But if you are graduating from a computer science degree and technology is supposed to be in your wheelhouse, and technology is something that you just learned technical skills about, then AOL.com might not be a great email address for you because it might demonstrate that you're outdated. Employers have shared this information with me, which is why I share this information with students and graduates. Also, keep in mind that your email can really tell a story about you. So making sure that you have a professional email. Emails are free and you can create one easily online at any time. And having an email with your first name, your last initial, or something that identifies you directly is important and really demonstrates professionalism within your professional brand. I had an employer present to a class recently, and she told the story about how important email addresses are. And she told the story about how last week she came across a resume of a very qualified candidate for a medical assistant position. However, the candidate's email address was babygirl29. The recruiter hesitated multiple times, she mentioned, because even though the qualifications on the resume were exactly what she was looking for, she didn't really know what to think about this candidate because of their email address. The email address stood out to her as unprofessional, and she felt compromised calling this candidate in for an interview because she was unsure of their professional brand at that point. That's an example that has been shared by multiple recruiters, not just one recruiter. That's just the most recent story. I also had a student submit a resume to an employer with the email of West Virginia fan. I thought nothing of it and did not advise the student otherwise, and the employer came back and said, this student might particularly be absent on Mondays because they enjoy West Virginia games. This was just a conclusion that the employer inferred based on the email address. Now, granted, that particular employer did not hold it against the student. It was more of a casual joke, but it really could have worked against that candidate, that particular student, had that hiring manager not been so friendly about it. And I mean, who's to say he didn't go to Marshall? So it's neither good nor bad, but it does give a particular perception about your professional brand that you should be aware of, because employers are taking these bits of information and interpreting them for themselves to determine value of your professional brand, because employment is an economic relationship between a job seeker, between an employee and an employer. And an employer at all times wants to feel good about that hire because of the investment. And more on that as we continue through. So that will be our header section. Moving right along, the very next section in our resume is either going to be a career objective or a professional profile. And you might ask yourselves, okay, well, which one is it? And this is where we have a decision to make. A career objective and a professional profile are utilized in different aspects of career progression. What I mean by that is if you are entering into a brand new field, a brand new degree program, then you will want to choose a career objective because you have less than 2 years of experience in the position you are seeking, or in this case, clinical and internship experience. If you are somebody who has been in your industry for years and you just came back to college to continue your education and build on your qualifications, then you would do something called a professional profile or a qualification summary. The different categories or the different content areas demonstrate something different to an employer. One says that you have experience within the field. The other demonstrates that you are brand new to the field, which is why you are clearly stating what you're looking for. A career objective is most of the time short, specific, and tailored to the position, just as the professional profile is. A career objective example might sound like this: seeking a position as a chef where I can utilize my demonstrated skills in creating new recipes, developing menus, and staff development. Another strong career objective is seeking a position as, and fill in the position title, where I may utilize my brand new education and previous work experience. The career objective and professional profile are two areas in which you may embed keywords. That's right, keywords. What are keywords? Keywords are words that exist in the job description from the employer, and these are key words that might stand out as technical skills or as career competencies, such as teamwork, leadership, problem solving, critical thinking. And so the career objective is an area for us to write an extra sentence or two if needed to embed additional keywords. When you press submit through a job application online, before your resume is ever seen by a human, it will be scanned by an applicant tracking system. An applicant tracking system is looking for a degree of similarity or overlap with your resume against the original job description you are applying for. The job description has particular keywords that are important to an employer, and the applicant tracking system has been set up to scan your resume looking for those particular keywords. When keywords are found, a resume may be flagged to be observed by a human because of overlap in keywords. And so keywords are a very important concept, and in order for us to remain strategic with our resume, we must review how many keywords and overlap we have. The career objective and the professional profile are two places where we may embed keywords to work towards our advantage. A professional profile might look like a sentence like the career objective summarizing skills, or sometimes people put it in bullet format because it has a nice, clear, concise appearance. As soon as you have put a career objective or a professional profile, the very next section you want to include is your education. A lot of people say, well, that's bizarre. I normally put education at the bottom of my resume. And once you've been in the field working for 1 to 2 years, you also may decide to move your education section to the bottom. However, when you graduate from Blue Ridge, your new degree or your new credential is the #1 thing that you're bragging about. Therefore, you must have it at the top of your resume so you ensure that employers notice it immediately. Also, your resume reads like a story of order of importance, starting with your name, hello, my name is, here's what I'm looking for in my career objective, and here's why I'm qualified to ask, with the education section right there as the next section. The education section demonstrates your knowledge, skills, and abilities or your qualifications for applying for the job. Your education section is another area where keywords might exist. Oftentimes, an employer will say what level of degree they are looking for, what level of credential they are seeking. That is a keyword. And writing out Associates of Applied Science or Associates of Science often would be a keyword as well. Be sure that when you write out your education section, you write Blue Ridge Community and Technical College. Very often I receive resumes from students that say Blue Ridge Community College, and that is a college that exists in Virginia, not in Martinsburg, West Virginia. Also, if you were to be hired and that employer asked you for transcripts and your transcript said Community and Technical College, your employer might observe that discrepancy and wonder. And so just to make sure that, that your employer knows exactly where you went to the correct school, be sure to write out Blue Ridge Community and Technical College. If you are creating your resume in advance of your graduation date, then you will still want to list the current degree program you're in, but you will write anticipated graduation date. You might also write expected graduation date. Both options are available. If your GPA is a 3.0 or above, then that's considered very impressive and you'll want to list that. Maybe you've also been on the president's list or the dean's list. Those are things that you could also include in the education section. Also, some things that are important to include in the education section are certifications and certificates. If you've received a professional development certificate along the way, then you'll want to add that underneath of the degree program that you're currently pursuing. If you have obtained any awards along the way, maybe outstanding student of the semester, then that is absolutely an accolade that you would want to add to the education section. Sometimes people put it underneath of education. Sometimes people create another header called honors and awards. And all of those things exist or lie around the education section because they are contributing towards your qualifications and demonstrating that all within one area. Your education section is pretty gosh darn important. Oftentimes people will say to me, should I put previous degrees in my education section? Now, some employers might say, well, if it doesn't relate, then don't put it. I will tell you to always put it every single time because it tells a story about your professional brand. If you went to college for 4 years and you got a degree and then you came back to Blue Ridge to build on that degree is still very important. It says to an employer that you can commit to a 4-year program and you can finish that program. It tells a lot of career competencies when you put all of your educational credentials. Now, if you've been to a lot of colleges but you've never finished your degree, then that might tell a different story to an employer. It might demonstrate that you commit, but you don't always finish. And so you have to analyze the psychology or the strategy behind the information that you are putting on your resume and how that contributes to your professional brand. And never worry, because I am here for your support in the Office of Career Services at any time when you may need it. After the education section, we get into some choices here. We get into the experience section. And the experience section is crafted in different ways based on the particular format that you're utilizing. Now, I started to expose you to a difference in format when we talked about the career objective and the professional profile. The reason why is because if you chose a career objective, which is you've been in your career for less than 2 years or you're entering into a brand new industry, then your format might look different than those who chose a professional profile because they are demonstrating career progression within an industry. So if you chose a career objective, then your experience section is going to look different than if you chose a professional profile. If we refer to our resume primer, we can learn a little bit more about this. This is where I expose you to the different types of formats, a chronological versus a functional. When you are in a field or degree program, when you are in an industry for many years and you've had multiple jobs, then you will do well with something known as a chronological resume format. A chronological resume format demonstrates career progression and growth within an industry or organization. Versus those individuals who are entering into a brand new field, they will utilize the resume format known as functional. Functional is where you get to group your experience and skills based on the knowledge, skills, and abilities that you learn from your program and internship or clinical experience. So based on what you chose, a career objective or professional profile, will help infer which resume format is the best for your circumstance. Either way, we will still list the experience of your previous employers, but in different formats based on functional or chronological. If you have been in your field for many years or a few years and you are demonstrating career progression, then you will choose a chronological style. You will list your most recent job. You'll describe your job and your description of duties or accomplishments and outcomes. You'll list where it's located as well as your month and start year and current or end date. And you will demonstrate this by showing career progression. My job now, which I grew on from here. Very straightforward. However, if you are utilizing a functional section, you are going to break down your experience based on knowledge, skills, and ability that you've obtained from your classroom studies or from your academic program. For example, you might break it down as administrative or financial budgets, and then you will describe the knowledge, skills, and abilities that you have as it relates to these subcategories. And you will utilize the the bullet point formula of an action word description of duties or an accomplishment or outcome still, even while in this format. So let's look at a few different examples of some resumes. And so first I will show you an example of a chronological resume. James Thompson has been in the manufacturing field for many years. He has started with a qualification summary, and he's listed the areas of competencies where he is efficient or advanced. He still has his education as his very next section, and the reason why is because he is currently working on a credential. And so, of course, education went right back up to the top. We can see here his other qualifications and academic degrees previously as well. His work experience shows career progression, the most recent job, and those he had before. All the jobs are similar enough that it shows promotion and progression from one to the next. This is an example of a chronological resume. Let's look now at an example of a functional style resume and the different ways that the functional style area can vary based on your style and technique. Mary Smith decided that she wanted to do her functional area in a way by listing her classes. She referred to this as relevant coursework. She graduated from the University of Virginia in computer science, and based on looking at different jobs that she's applied to, these are different areas that her prospective employers are looking for competencies. So by listing these different areas or these different important competencies as relevant coursework, she is describing to a prospective employer in the area of which she's obtained knowledge, skills, and ability from her program. This is one example of a functional style area and the way that a student or graduate can craft it to work for them. Let's see some other functional style areas because they really vary based on style. This particular student studied computer science in the field of cybersecurity. She did a very similar thing and wrote out her related coursework. She went in to make it specific by breaking it down, cyber and IT versus her programming classes. So when a future employer can say, okay, she's finished her program, but what did her program entail? Oh my, all of these different classes. You'll see here this example also has the honors and awards section, which I mentioned previously when talking about education. This particular student even went further. They not only described their knowledge, skills, and abilities from the classes they took, but they then broke it down based on subcategories. She went through and broke it down: cyber security and IT, operating systems, programming and markup languages, software, and even customer service, which is outside of technical computer science skills, but is seen more as a soft skill or a career competency. This student, you'll notice, listed their previous employment, and they listed the first two as well as the description of duties that related because it directly relates to the job that she is going for. However, the previous two employments that did not directly relate, she did not describe her description of duties because it might not relate or be as important to an employer, but rather she listed the jobs to demonstrate within her professional brand that she has been employed and working since 2017. So this is one more example of a functional style area within a resume. Let's look at one last example so that way we can move on. This particular student, John Jacob Smith, was a working professional and had a career within HVAC before he came back to Blue Ridge to increase his skill sets. He put here that he has an associate's in HVAC, as well as his information from Blue Ridge in information technology, and also his certifications. He's listed in it a different way than the other examples. There is no right or wrong way as long as the information lives there and is clear, concise, and an employer can observe it in regards to the qualifications for the role you're applying for. This particular student had been in the field for a few years and was very knowledgeable about the different components that an employer is looking for in regards to the jobs he's applying for. Therefore, he created his functional style area very specific to the jobs that he was applying to. You might find that you create your functional area one way today and then modify it as you are searching for your job after graduation. The functional style area is unique to you, but can also be crafted with assistance and help from me in the Office of Career Services. I'd be more than happy to work with you in customizing your functional style area to really demonstrate your qualifications, knowledge, skills, and ability to a future employer. Moving forward, we see here something that I mentioned when looking at the resume primer guide, but the formula to write our bullet points. Now, you may notice from all of the previous examples on my worksheet or on my workshop that all bullet points begin with an action verb, a previous action verb, as well as a brief description of duty. Now, not all of them have accomplishments or frequencies. And an accomplishment or frequency is normally seen as a number. An accomplishment or an outcome is normally seen as a number as well as a frequency. When you have your externship, internship, or clinical experience, you will have an opportunity to work with an organization within your degree program. When you are at that experience, when you are at your job site, you will get to observe and participate. Hopefully you're taking note of all of the description of duties that you're performing, and you're also taking note of the number of people you're working with. Because when we put numbers and frequencies into our bullet points, we can describe accomplishments and outcomes to a future employer. For example, a student came to me and was crafting a resume, and one of her bullet points said, conduct intakes. And I thought, okay, well, that's very vague. I conduct intakes as a career coach. Admissions counselors conduct intakes. Doctors conduct intakes. Pretty much everybody conducts intakes. So what kind of intakes do you conduct? And after going through who, what, where, when, why, we discovered that she conducted 100 computerized intakes each day to verify insurance in a busy radiology department. And so by adding in numbers and frequencies and adjectives, we can describe to an employer how much you work at your current job and a little element of your professional brand in a lot stronger way than just by writing conducting intakes. And so by following the formula of action, word, description, or duties, and by putting in numbers and frequencies, we can describe accomplishments or outcomes through our experience of our description of duties bullet points. We can also utilize support, and we can utilize help for writing our bullet points. There's a website called onetonline.org, which is hosted by the Department of Labor, and you can go on there and type in your job or the job that you are going for, and it will produce a profile. That profile can act as inspiration to help you write your bullet points. These are some of the things that I will help teach you in the Office of Career Services when you connect with me after graduation. After we've created our education section, our functional section, we've put in our previous work experience, then we have the opportunity to add other sections. And maybe we created these along the way, but if not, these are some areas we can add to our resume to bolster the information or to support the information about our professional brand. If you have any activities that are academic or professional in nature, maybe you participate in Future Farmers of America, maybe you are an active member of Phi Theta Kappa, which is an honor society. Those are activities or information that you would want to list because they really describe that you're willing to go the extra mile as a professional. Awards and honors we mentioned earlier. If you've ever obtained an award or an honor while at Blue Ridge, then you can include that right underneath your degree program in the education section. as well as certifications and licensure. Special clearance might be if you've ever worked for the government or been in the military and that you know that you can obtain a special clearance. This is going to be especially important in organizations that are law enforcement or government in nature. And then as well as any of those special skills that you would want to brag about to a future employer. And here are some continued examples of those different additional areas and how you might enter them or might list them on your resume to read in a clear, concise way. And hopefully after all of that, you have crafted the strategic resume of choice by an employer. Hopefully after that, your resume will be submitted and you will be called immediately for an interview. My name is Siona Escoto. It has been my privilege to present to you resume writing, and if you need to visit me in the Office of Career Services, you can email me at careerservices@blueridgectc.edu. It has been my privilege, and thank you so much.